Hello and welcome to my preview video on MeloVox Vocal Harmony. As its name suggests, it's a multi-channel vocal harmonizer, especially written for vocalists. So I think the best thing to start this video is to hear MeloVox in action. So here we go.
Lost in echoes of your voice, in the noise I found my choice. Dancing shadows on the wall with you. In the twilight we find a way, wandering hearts that never stray. Whisper soft like a summer breeze. Together we move with this. In the rhythm of the night, we shine like stars so bright. With you it feels so right. In your arms I take flight. I'm not waiting any longer. This love is getting stronger. I'm breaking through the night. In your arms I feel so right. I'm not waiting any longer. This love is getting stronger. I'm breaking through the night. In your arms I feel so right.
Now MeloVox has two distinct algorithms which can be used, and the first one that you heard there was the vocal mode, and what makes it so special is the formant preservation. So let's take a listen to another example with a whole octave pitch shift. We've got a third, a fifth and an octave here, and that really pushes it. And you can hear when we bring in the formant preservation how it stops it sounding so Mickey Mouse-ish.
Ooh, I bet you're wondering how I knew about your plans to make me blue with some other guy you knew before. Between the two of us, guys, you know I love you more. It took me by surprise, I must say, when I found out yesterday. Don't you know that I heard through the grapevine?
So as you could hear from that example there, without the formant preservation, it's quite Mickey Mouse-ish, and that's usually what happens when you pitch shift vocals. So let's start by taking a quick look at the interface and what it has to offer. And the first thing we're going to look at is the top row of buttons, starting with the main menu. Now in here we can init the preset, we can load and save other presets. We have the preset manager, setlist manager and output monitor there. We have the settings where we can come and adjust the latency, oversampling, frame size and things like that to do with the optimizing the pitch shifter. And we also have the help manual in here, so if you get stuck on anything you can come and have a look. And yet again, David Collett's been hard at work on a new help manual for this product, and it's very specific and explains how the harmonies work, so be sure to check this out. So the next button along is where we load and save presets, and presets are grouped into two different categories, vocal and instrument, but you can add your own categories and stuff, and I'll show you how to do that later. The next thing we've got is the key and scale, and we can pick a key and scale using these two drop down menus. And once a key's selected, key and scale, these next 12 buttons represent that key and scale, with the blue notes here representing the notes in the selected scale. Now notice the little number in the top left corner telling you which note of the scale each one of these blue notes is. Now if I quickly just set this second voice to be a fifth, you'll see that on this main scale you'll see that there's two of these blue buttons that are underlined, and those are the two active voices. We have a third and a fifth active. Now MeloVox was written specifically for vocalists, but you can actually enable the instrument algorithm, which works better on instruments. You cannot use the formant preservation on the instrument setting. If formant preservation is enabled, the timbre button can be used to bias towards male-female type voices, and the Q frequency is used to fine-tune the algorithm. Now moving over to the voices section, we have 5 different modes. The first of which, the auto sense, is probably the most common and was what was used in the opening demos. The other modes are very exciting, and we're going to go over them later in this video. So below the control mode we have a set of 5 buttons, and you can see the first 2 of these buttons are blue, which means they're enabled. And we have 5 knobs which control the various volume levels of each voice. And we'll spend some time going over that later. Let's move on to the noise gate stroke output section. In here we have a noise gate which can be set to reduce background noise. So we can set a threshold and then set the reduction knob to remove any unwanted noise, especially useful in auto sense mode. To the right of that we've got the overall harmony level, and underneath that we have the main master output. Now the 2 buttons underneath control the original, so we can turn the original on off, and we can also turn the harmony on off. Now underneath that we've got a vocal doubler, which is really nice, and that enhances the vocal and turns it from a mono to a stereo signal. If we hit the harmony button, it only applies the doubler to the harmony and not the original vocal. Now moving along, we've got a 10-band EQ which we can enable and adjust as required. Now by default that affects the harmony unless we hit the pre button, and the pre button will affect then the incoming vocal. And finally we have a reverb which we can turn on, and we hit the harmony button again if we just want it to affect the harmony. So let's go through the scenario of you having a song and wanting to set up MeloVox to provide harmonies for that song. Now for those of you that are not really musically minded, you could just go and load one of the default presets, and that's all well and good. But it's quite easy to set up your own anyway. So I'm going to init the patch, and you'll see by default we get 2 voices highlighted in blue here. But the most important thing of all is to set the key and scale before you start. And so it's really important to know the key and scale of your song. So if you don't know what that is, just try different ones until you get something that sounds right. So now if we click on the first voice button, you'll see a menu pop up, and that menu contains numbers from 1 to 12, and those represent the index into the scale. So the first one's set to 3, second one's set to 5. But if I temporarily select off, we've just got one single voice active. So if I was to sing an F now, I would get a G sharp harmony. So if I click on the second button and set that to 5, which is a 5th above the F, we're going to get a C harmony. If I set it to 6, I will get a 6th harmony, which will harmonize with the C sharp. And I'm also going to set the third button to an octave. Now generally you want to set the thirds slightly higher in volume than the other 2 parameters, but the octave tends to get a little bit lost, so you might want to turn the octave up a little bit, especially if you're using formant preservation. So now we have 3 voices set up, but we can disable any one of these just by long pressing. So if I long press on voice 3 button, you'll see that it toggles that voice off, and you'll see a little no-go sign up in the top right corner, and it's no longer blue. To turn that back on again, we just long press it again. Now if this preset you're designing is for vocals, then turn on the formant preservation, and optionally turn on various effects and test those out. Once you have a preset that you like, hit the menu, pick save preset, and give that preset a name. So in this case I'm going to call it my first preset, and then hit the save button. Now that will appear in the load preset menu. Notice it's not currently in a folder, but we'll look at how to organize presets with the preset manager later in this video. For now, I want to take a look at a hidden feature which is really useful, especially while we're testing presets. Now if you look at the top row of buttons, you'll notice that some buttons have a little downward arrow, meaning they've got a swipe function attached. And this is true of the power button. And if I swipe down on the power button, you see a little pop-up, hidden pop-up appear. And it's asking us to drag and drop files to that window. So I've prepared a number of test files here, and I'm just going to drag and drop them from the Files app directly to this preview window. Now this is building up a library of test audio files which we can use while creating presets. Now once you've got this list of test files, you can just click on one to start playback.
Lost in the glass of your own voice, in the noise I found my choice.
Now as you can hear, we didn't have formant preservation on there, so let's turn that on.
With you, in the twilight we find our way.
And to turn off, either power off or swipe back down again and pick another file.
Oh, when you walk by every night talking.
Now this is great if you've got some acapellas of your own songs.
Ooh, I bet you're wondering how I knew.
Now I did plan on removing this feature, but it's been so useful for me I've left it in, and you might find it equally as useful. Now in MeloVox there's lots of ways of harmonizing, and there's lots of things it can do that we've not even discussed. So I'm going to take you through the various control modes and explain what they do. Now AutoSense mode detects the pitch of the incoming voice and applies the harmonies on top of that detected pitch, using that pitch as like a root, if you like. Fixed pitch mode doesn't even try to attempt to detect the frequency of the incoming signal. Instead, it just adds fixed pitch offsets to whatever vocal you are singing. This is very much how just a standard pitch shifter would work. This mode is probably better used for instruments, but not as dynamic in terms of the way it creates the harmonies. Now the next three modes all depend on MIDI input, and MIDI chord is probably one of the most useful of the lot. It accepts multi-note MIDI input and then creates a harmony for every note you press. MIDI melody mode works in a similar way to the auto detect or the fixed pitched, where we set up the harmonies and we use one input note to determine the root, so it replaces the auto detection feature. And finally we have a traditional vocoder, which is really easy to set up and use, which is not usually the case with most vocoders. So let's switch to chord mode and give you an example of how that works. So what I'm going to do is play notes in and around C4. Any note above C4 creates a harmony above the original. Anything below C4 creates a harmony below the original. And to assist me with this, I'm going to get my assistant, Lewis Capaldi, to sing along.
I'm going on during this time, I feel there's no one to save me. This all and nothing really got away, you're driving me crazy. I need somebody to hear, somebody to know, somebody to have, somebody to hold. It's easy to say.
So as you can see here, the notes that I'm physically playing appear up on this top notes bar in red, and they are the harmonies that I'm adding to the original vocal, and they follow the scale. So this method makes it easy to send a vocal line through MeloVox and then have your DAW sending MIDI notes in to add melodies in real time. Now the next example shows Helium sending a MIDI track of chords into MeloVox and triggering the vocoder.
Where are we? What the hell? Does
yes, it was hard to get hold of that vocal line without the vocoder. Anyway, long pressing on the vocoder button will bring up the vocoder options. So you've got 12 bands of vocoder that you can adjust here, as well as the carrier, which you can set up using these knobs. Although it can't actually take an external carrier at the minute, I'm going to add that in the first update. Now, earlier in this video we went through the process of making our first patch, and we saved that patch, but it didn't end up in a folder. It ended up in the root of the load preset dialog. Now we can fix that by going into the preset manager, and you can actually pick it from the main menu, or alternatively just swipe down on the little file button. Now in here we can delete files, rename files, but we can also create folders and browse the structure here. So I'm going to create a folder called My Bank, and then I'm going to drag the patch we created earlier into My Bank. Now if we close this window down and have a look at the preset button, you'll see that there's a new folder there with our freshly created preset. So you could, for instance, create a folder for a particular song and have one or more presets in there for that song. This brings me to our next feature, which is the set list, and it is far more useful than you might think. So if we take a look at the main menu, you'll see that there's an option there called set list. And when we pick that option, we get this floating window with 12 buttons. Now you don't have to do it that way. You can also swipe down on the scale button. So we can move this floating window anywhere we like. And the idea behind this is that we can do one of two things. We can store snapshots in here. So if I make a setup for a patch here, for say an intro or something to a song, I can press and hold on this first button and give it a name. So if I give it the name intro and hit save, you'll see that there's a snapshot saved there. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to make some changes to this, stick an octave up in there, and just make a couple of changes to the knobs, turn on the vocal doubler, and then yeah, put it on the harmony only. Then when I press and hold, I can give this another name like chorus or verse or whatever I want. And we then have two presets, and we can switch between them just by pressing the buttons. But it doesn't stop there. If we bring up the program preset manager, should I say, we can drag and drop presets from the preset manager directly onto these buttons. Now, this is quite difficult with using the iPad trackpad, so just bear with me. Drag and drop's not the easiest of things. So we can build up a list of snapshots and presets, and be able to switch between them in real time just at the press of a button. And that might be really useful in certain situations, especially if you have only one vocal line coming in here. And the switching is quite, I wouldn't say seamless, but it's almost seamless. Now it's important to note that when you save a preset, it saves the key and the scale. Now the default presets are all set to C major, because it's down to you to change them to what you want. But in the case of a set list, what we do not want is the set list changing key and scale just because we've chosen another preset. Now to solve this, just long press the key button and it will lock the key and the scale. Now we're free to switch between items on the set list without affecting that key and scale. So let's have a listen.
Lost in echoes of your voice, in the noise I found my choice. Dancing shadows on the wall with you. In the twilight we find our way. wandering hearts that never stray, whisper soft like a summer breeze. Together we're moving this.
Now the last thing I want to talk about in this preview video is the output monitor. Now there's a constant compressor going in the background to make sure all the voices don't get overwhelming, but we can preview that by picking output monitor from the main menu. So you can come in here and make any adjustments that you require. You can even turn the thing off if you wish. It's always a good idea to keep an eye on this. If you are peaking or your output's too hot, you can come in here and tweak the compressor. And one last thing I need to mention before we go is the settings for the app. This is really important because we have to configure MeloVox for the lowest common denominator. In other words, older iPads. If you've got a newer iPad, you can come in here and you can decrease the latency and increase the quality just by tweaking these settings. So that just about concludes my quick preview video of MeloVox. I'm putting the finishing touches to it now. Shouldn't be too long before you see it on the store. So as usual, don't forget to thumb up the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next time.